Commissioner, there was the video the other day at the commissioners meeting that you began discussing what's happening with the jail and the jail trust. I was some context and perspective. I remember when the jail opened. I can't remember a sheriff's race in the last 3 decades that the jail wasn't an issue. And you said, I believe the words were that that was the best tour you've ever had. And you've been down at the jail as either commissioner or a employee for commissioners, former commissioners. And all of your time, that's the best. You said that's the best tour you've ever had. All I hear is negativity about the building and the jail trust. So I haven't read much about it. Give us an idea of what you were saying the other day and expand on what that was about.
That's why I felt it's so important to set the record straight. 21 years ago was the first time I went into the facility. And at that time, that structure was only 9 years old. And it was already in terrible shape then. There have been some improvements over the time since I've been commissioner. But really and truly, with the sheriff in charge, there was a limit to what you could do or influence. And so now with the trust, you have direct input because I have a designee that I appoint to that. And they took over during the middle of a pandemic. I don't think there's any small gesture in that either. You know, we were all grappling with what to do with that. And the jail itself was a hot spot. So having to take on all of those things that we were learning as we go on how we were going to best combat COVID. And then at the same time, trying to take over when the transition from the sheriff was not a friendly one, they didn't get very much help. And I just think that they really deserve a lot of accolades because, you know, now there's a grand jury that's being called out to question some of the things that are going on. And I think that it's far better now than it has been in lots of times in the past when, you know, there were very legitimate concerns.
Now, I'm struck by another thing you said. We understand, we see the headlines about the district attorney having grand juries and looking at some things dealing first with the state pardon and parole board and also the jail trust, things around the jail trust. But you said, as I recall, that you've invited District Attorney Prater to go on a tour. Is that unprecedented? Has he done this before? And just give us an example about how this came to be and what this might mean.
David Prater's certainly been in the jail many times. It's not that he hasn't. What I wanted to show him, though, personally, I wanted to show him the number of things that I've gone and observed. You know, for one, I went through the crawl spaces. I mean, there's community tours that happen from time to time, and even these annual inspection tours that the sheriff and commissioners will do doesn't necessarily mean going into the crawl spaces and actually looking at the pipes, the return air vents, some of the places where the exhaust goes, so that we could deal with humidity, black mold. We could deal with fire hazards. And of course, what we've now done is secure water pressure and hot water being able to be delivered to all 13 floors, maybe for the first time since the inception of the building. And so those are things that I wanted to point out. They've even fixed a little thing like the toilets. You know, previously you could just multiply flush the toilets, and the way the connection of the pipes were, it all was disruptive to the entire floor, and there was no master control shutting off a pipe. I mean, it seems like a little thing, but once something is built that big, it's really hard to go in and isolate that and not create other issues, particularly with water pressure, and guaranteeing that, you know, it won't flood in some other area. Unintended consequences, if you will. And now they've got it fixed where they can't flush it more than twice every few minutes, which will keep the sock bombs from being so effective to flood out. What I pointed out in those remarks the other day, yes, employee retention has been an issue, but this has only got to help the morale and the employee retention rates by just not having to go sift through a river of human fecal matter just to get to your duty post every day. And so we have solved a lot of those problems. The jail trust, since taking over, has actually reduced our water bill, Scott, 84% a month. It was around $63,000 a month, and it's down to about $8,000 a month. We were one of the top 5 consumers of water in the whole city. That puts us above all of the Oklahoma City area golf courses. So this is major strides. I know that's not stuff that fills the news every day, but those are nevertheless extremely significant improvements.
All right, so you've just given me some information I've never heard before. I mean, I knew about the sock bombs, but I never knew about how much water the place used. We knew there was some problems with the plumbing, and a lot of that sounds like it's being taken care of. Is it all frustrating to you? And when I start researching our discussion, for instance, right now, I mean, most of the stuff that I see in the media is about the protests, which are not at the jail; they're in the building where that you work, right there where the commissioners have these meetings. That's about 90% of what I see is the chaos that goes on around. But it appears there were a lot of stories that you're frustrated with and others are frustrated with that simply aren't getting out because there's sexier topic lines. Is that correct?
Well, that's right. And I mean, these are not insignificant things too, because some of these things are issues that the Department of Justice, which have been hanging over our heads since their report in July of 2008, which predated me coming into office by about 6 months. So I was really the first one to have this hot potato thrown in my lap and say, now here, you got to deal with it. We've never had a poll that indicated the public will to increase taxes on themselves to try to financially address a lot of these issues that are extremely expensive. And so being able to do this within budget and along the way with a managed plan so that one fix doesn't create another problem have been some major things that we've done over the course of this time. And the Department of Justice has recognized that. They've given us high marks even prior to the trust taking over. And then, of course, when I used to walk through starting 21 years ago, but even as recently as a couple of years ago, and you'd see, shower heads just spraying like a geyser, you would just get so frustrated about why can't that be fixed? I mean, that seems so simple. And there's still some improvements to do over that, to be sure. I don't want to make it sound like everything is hunky-dory. They know they've got some other things they have to fix, and they're going to be some big ticket items. I'm on the budget board for Oklahoma County, and we're going to work on trying to identify some funding. There might be some legal options available to us with the American Relief Plan money, what's commonly referred to as ARPA funds, and that would be really terrific if we're able to do that as well.
All right, so let's talk about what's next. You have a lot of what you're saying is that the plumbing issues largely have been solved. The sock bomb issues largely have been solved. People are not having to show up in a stinky, wet building and wet from what you've said is really unmentionable. But there's also there are still deaths in the jail. There's still unrest down there. People are still unhappy with this facility. So with this behind you, this being solved, and although it's unreported in a great amount, what's next?
Well, obviously, employee issues are a top concern. We're having staffing level concerns, but so is every restaurant that I've gone to. So is every drugstore I've been into lately. Who hasn't been up and down any major thoroughfare in Oklahoma City and seen the victim of our own success problem that we're suffering from right now, that we have one of the lowest unemployment rates in the United States. And in addition to that, those who may be able to get some funding to stay home and not work right now because of the federal COVID response has complicated things further. So this jail is already a challenging place to find employees to go work. That's just the nature of the business. Every jail in America similarly suffers from the same problem. However, you compound that with a low unemployment rate and some of these COVID issues that we're dealing with still, it makes it a very complicated problem. But there's not a grand jury looking at a restaurant staffing level or even my road crew staffing level. So I just want to say that is a kind of an unfair criticism, in my opinion, to the jail trust. They're doing the best they can. They've offered pay incentives. But yes, we definitely know that we could use more staff. So anybody watching who'd like to go work at the jail, there are some real good benefit programs that we've put together, and we're in hopes that we'll start recruiting more employees to work there.
Mr. Brian Maughan, thanks for the update. Appreciate the information, appreciate the perspective and context, because it's something I've not been hearing about, and I'm glad you visited with us today.
Thank you, Scott, for the chance to be with you today.
Thank you.